Hey there, what's going on, my friend? Joy is the topic for this week. This is the topic we're taking a look at in Transforming the World, coming out of the Disciples Journal. As I said, we're week number 30. Hard to believe that. Joy is the topic. Now, according to Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, joy is listed as a fruit of the Spirit. But sometimes even born again Christians struggle to be joyful. We do. We struggle to be joyful. And there's a lady by the name of Hannah that sort of she kind of gives us a hint as to why we struggle to be joyful, even as Christians. Let's talk about Hannah's story in just a moment. I'm Pastor Greg, and I'll be back in just a moment. So, question number 4 in the Disciples Journal asks this: does my joy depend on my relationship with God or my circumstances? As we took a look at yesterday, um, in the world's image, in the world's understanding, is that joy is based upon our external circumstances, but the Bible teaches us that joy is a fruit of the Spirit. I'd like I'd like to say that it's with God. I'd like to say that my joy is found through God, with God, because of my relationship with God. I'd like to say that. But I think we need to be honest with one another here. There are times when circumstances do rob me of my joy. Maybe they do the same thing to you. Um, it happens. It happens to us. Circumstances sometimes get the best of us. How do we deal with that? How do we overcome it? Well, there was a lady in the Old Testament by the name of Hannah. Um, Hannah could not have any children, and she kind of went to God and just bared her heart. She's like, look, um, this is almost too much for me to bear, Lord, the fact that I'm childless. And God hears her cries and gave her a son. The son, of course, she calls Samuel. Now, that's the same Samuel that you read about in the Old Testament. He was a great prophet, prophet that worked in Israel, prophet who anointed Saul as king, and then the same prophet that anointed David as king. Anyway, as Hannah looked back over her life, she realized something. She did. She says this. This is 1 Samuel 2:10. Said, those who oppose the Lord will be shattered. He will thunder in heavens. He will thunder in the heavens against them. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give power to his king. He will lift up the horn of his anointed. And one of the things that stands out here, and when you take a look at Hannah's story, is that during those dark times in her life when it seemed that she could not find any joy, the answer was not that God would change her circumstances, although that's what she thought would help. But rather, Hannah realizes, and this is the point in the statement that she's making, that the solution to all of this is when our joy seems so distant that we need to draw close to God. So, how in the world does a Christian walk through the valley of death and yet maintain joy? I mean, she wasn't facing death, but she was facing an awful lot of shame and struggled to find joy. And after Samuel was born, realized that the solution was not necessarily in the giving of the son, but in a deeper relationship with God. So how David kind of talks about this in the 23rd Psalm. You know, how does a person walk through the valley of death and maintain joy? According to David, they draw near to God. Verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. I fear no evil, For you are with me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. There is a solution to finding joy in those dark periods of our life. Yes, it is allowing the Holy Spirit to give birth to that joy we talked about yesterday, but it's also drawing closer to God. Drawing closer to God. Realizing that in life's darkest circumstances, we don't need God to change the circumstances. We need to draw nearer to Him, to be closer to Him, and realize that in those dark circumstances, there is God right there with us. Right there with us. You know that son that Hannah wanted so desperately, the son that was supposed to give her the joy she desired? When Samuel was born, you know what she did? She actually gave Samuel to the high priest and said, please raise him as a prophet and as a priest. And Hannah would probably get a chance to see little Samuel maybe once a year. You know, it's not like Samuel was right there in her house. And she discovers that it wasn't the child so much. It wasn't the change in the circumstances that would bring her joy. It was a closer relationship with God. To find the joy that you and I need in life, yes, we need to allow the Holy Spirit to give birth to that joy. We talked about that yesterday. But we also need to draw near to God. In other words, we don't oppose Him. We draw close to Him. And we find joy in that close relationship with God. We'll continue to talk about joy tomorrow on Transforming the World. I'm Pastor Greg. You have a joyful day.